Exclusively on Secular Media Network, this is the Gaytheist Manifesto.
Welcome to the Gaytheist Manifesto, your source for news, commentary, discussion, and debate at the intersection of the atheist movement and the LGBT rights movement. I am your host, Callie Wright, and I am joined by my co-host, Ari Coleman. Hello, Ari.
Yo, yo.
And I just want to start off by saying I am super stoked that there's no video of me, like while the intro of the podcast is playing, because I air drum every time, and I air drum really badly, and I always miss the parts. Like, there's a part where the cymbal hits off beat, and I never get that right, even though I'm a musician and I should know that by now, and I've heard our intro song like 3 million times.
Shame.
I know, I'm an objectively terrible person. So, this will be the final episode of the Gaytheist Manifesto for this year, and I figured we'd be super...
God, I thought you were going to say forever.
Announcements!
No!
So, I figured we would be super, super creative, like no other podcast is doing ever, because this is totally an original idea, and do sort of a year-in review, or what I like to call the Gaytheist Queer in Review, because wordplay is kind of my thing, right? Yeah. Womp, womp, womp. God. Okay. It's been a week since we've done an episode, and like going a week without doing an episode feels like we haven't done this in like 3 months. So, yeah. So anyways, I figured we'd spend this first segment talking about some personal milestones, stuff that we've achieved, we've gone through, we've been through this year, personally, professionally, in our lives and that kind of stuff. And then we'll talk about some news, we'll talk about world events and happenings and stuff in 2015. And then we'll close the show out by sharing some stuff that some friends and listeners to the show posted on Facebook. So, Ari, if you had to pick, like, if you said, like, look, I want to hear about your 2015, but you can literally only tell me one thing about what happened, what would you pick, do you think?
Oh, man. That is so difficult, because so many things happened this year. It's a tie. Can I do a tie? Or do I have to pick one?
We can, since it's a hypothetical, and I completely made up the boundaries anyways, like, yeah, we can do that.
Moving to Illinois and, starting my transition.
Two very, very good things. And
yes.
What exactly prompted the move to Illinois? Was it school-related, life-related, both, or?
Yeah, it's my partner is he just started his master's degree at Illinois State University, so that's why we're here.
Very cool.
And I'm the money.
You're the money?
Because he's the grad student, so there has to be some money. So
right.
I do the worky thing, and he does the study thing.
Right. That is true. Yeah, and starting your transition, that's pretty big too. So, how long has it been on T now?
Almost 3 months. Next week will be 3 months.
Yeah. Is it feeling like, because like with estrogen, it took a while like to really know like the difference between like, am I feeling this thing because I know I'm taking these pills and like it's a placebo thing? There came a point where I was like, no, this is actually the hormones. Have you gotten to that point yet? Or?
There have been a lot of things like that. As far as I've heard, testosterone is a hell of a drug, as you might say.
Yes.
It kicks in pretty quickly. I'm on a low dose, but even so, my voice has gotten lower, and I've got a whole bunch of hair and acne, and my fat is starting to redistribute already. Redistribute. There we go.
Nice.
So yeah, things are happening. It's exciting. Very, very cool.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And mine's probably transition related too, because I was thinking about this before we started recording, and when I'm thinking about all the awesome stuff that I was able to take part in 2015, and my God, we'd be here for like a week if I like went into detail about all of it. Mm-hmm. But because I was thinking about, ReasonCon, the Pennsylvania State Atheist Humanist Convention, getting to talk at the Carolina Secular Convention, all the cool activism stuff. But then I thought to myself, so, I started the job that I'm at now. I started in February, and but before I started that job, I was Callie to everyone and everywhere except work. I still had to hide at work. And when I started the new job that I started in February, that was the time where I was like, I literally don't have to hide from anyone anymore, unless I actually want to. I didn't have to hide who I was, or make sure that I got all the nail polish off really good, or make sure I changed clothes, or did everything I could to hide my boobs or whatever. Like, it had consumed so much of my life at that point. Like, it was simultaneously like an extremely huge deal and sort of like a logical next step kind of thing. But it was just like, that's kind of like the final nail in the coffin of me not being who I want to be anymore. And, to be in a place where I've really landed on my feet, at work, and, most of the people I work with know I'm trans now, and they just don't care.
Yeah.
Like I'm not like some special snowflake that they're all interested in as a curiosity. It's not like there's no bigotry or anything, at least not directed towards me. There have been some times where I felt kind of uncomfortable, but no one's expressed any outright hatred or bigotry towards me or anything like that. And like, I just feel generally safe and comfortable at work. And I think to myself, what a privilege that is, because there's so many people who don't have that. And I didn't have it for the longest time. And, and losing that was super scary, because I landed in a great place, obviously, but I didn't know that at the time. When I lost my other job, I was ready to take like an entry level retail job making like $8 or $9 an hour just to get out of the situation. But instead I end up making more money with awesome insurance and a great company and all that kind of stuff. So like, I guess if I had to pick like number one milestone, I think that would be it, because that was kind of the final, the final step in, and I guess my social transition in like, I don't have to lie to anyone else anymore ever about who I am.
Yes.
And that was an absolutely incredible feeling. Okay. So you did 1 and 2 because you did a tie. So what else you got?
So since I moved to a new state, obviously I have a new job now, and I have also been amazingly lucky with my workplace being awesomely supportive, especially my boss, who actually helped facilitate me recently talking to some other coworkers about pronouns and things. And it was also a really cool experience with my name, because I went straight from using my birth name in Arkansas, and then I moved here to Illinois, and then I immediately started using Ari. It took a lot of getting used to at first. I even messed up my own name once or twice because I hadn't even really used it before. But it's amazing how much of a difference it makes just being called a name that doesn't make you dysphoric every day.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I accidentally introduced myself to someone as the wrong name once. And it was because it was the couple who lived next door to the house that I used to live in with my ex. And I was there, I was like letting the dogs out or something. And like, I was dressed super androgynously and my hair wasn't super long. So it was like, I couldn't necessarily blame the guy for not, for just, gendering me as male, because super low voice, generally masculine presentation, whatever. So I was like, I was nervous, and I was like, and like my birth name just flew out. And I was like, damn it.
Yes.
So, oh God, it's like being 7 years old and super awkward. and I think obviously, we can't go talking about 2015 without talking about the podcast itself, because our first episode came out right around the time that I started the job that I'm at now, actually. Mm-hmm. I think I recorded the first episode. I actually recorded it in the office of my old job. I don't know that my boss knows I did that.
Well, okay.
And then it came out after, not too long, editing and all that kind of fun stuff. And, started out with with Jonathan and Daniel, who I still both love dearly, who are obviously no longer with us. And I have just been blown away.
Guys, they're still alive, as far as I know.
They are. They both very much are.
Yes.
I love them both like brothers still. But I have absolutely been floored by the response to the show in the not even a year that it's been out. And, I thought to myself, like, this will be a thing after I'm doing it for a year or two, maybe. Maybe I'll have some listeners after I've been doing it for 8 or 10 months or a year. I go to my first convention in April, which is ReasonCon, and all of a sudden I have all of these people who are saying, "Oh, you're Callie that does the Gaytheist Manifesto, right?" And I'm like, "Yes, who the hell are you?"
Holy hell, I'm famous all of a sudden.
And I hate that because I'm not. Like, when I can pay my bills with this podcast, patreon.com/the Gaytheist Manifesto, that's when that's when I will accept people telling me that I'm famous. I'm just a person with a podcast at this point. It's just, and part of me is not surprised because there's not, I was actually really surprised when I initially had the idea for the show. I went and searched around for other people who were already doing it because I was sure that there were already people doing a show like this. Mm-hmm. And, maybe there are, but I wasn't able to find any. And so I was like, wow, like, so I'm actually kind of like filling a niche here, which is cool. So we started doing the show, and obviously, it's a big topic. There was no shortage of, episode ideas and stuff like that. And and people have just latched on, like, really, really interested in having these conversations, which has been amazing to me. I mean, it's a little overwhelming because, people joke about, how many podcasts I've been on, being interviewed. And I mean, I counted it up the other day and it's like 30 or something crazy like that,
what?
Which is, yeah. Which I think that speaks for the secular community and how ready they are to talk about trans stuff and to talk about LGBT stuff, especially when it, and when it comes to, how people can be better allies and stuff like that. And I mean, it's been, absolutely amazing. And then, going to conventions and meeting people and, you listen to these people on podcasts for so long and then you finally meet them and it's like, wow, Seth Andrews isn't a disembodied Zordon-like figure. Like he's a guy. And just like, I'm totally not a person who's about hero worship or anything like that. I don't, there's no one that I would really call a hero necessarily, just because I've kind of stopped believing in putting people on pedestals. But, there's definitely a lot of people in the movement that I have a ton of respect for who have, inspired me into doing activism and who have since actually helped me doing stuff, helping me get in contact with convention organizers and, with, guests for the show and that kind of stuff. And, and all of a sudden I'm sitting down and I'm having dinner with Matt Dillahunty and Richard Carrier and David Fitzgerald, and we're all talking about porn. And it's just, I don't know. It's an amazing thing. And then, the personal stories of people that I meet, and obviously, I mean, I'm not going to tell anybody's stories on their behalf here or anything like that, but how willing people have been, when I'm, at the conventions and people come up to me and they share these intensely personal things with me, because I've been pretty open about the things that I struggle with on the show. And it's really, really humbling. And it's a special kind of honor that people feel like they can trust me with that kind of thing. And, and they can talk about all the hard stuff that they've been through. And, for them to say that, something that was said on the podcast or something like that helped them. I mean, it's an absolute honor to have people say that kind of stuff to me. And that's been kind of, when shit gets really, really hard for me, and sometimes it does, with, dysphoria and struggling with my weight and, feeling, financial problems and, before I met Celeste, struggling with intimacy and, feeling like really unloved and stuff like that. Like, that's the kind of stuff that's gotten me through. So like, I just always want to throw that back to them. Like, you have no idea how much you're helping me too. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's been a very symbiotic relationship, and one that I am super, super appreciative of.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've only been on the podcast officially for a few weeks, and I'm already like, what is happening? Like, there are so many people like just wanting to reach out to me, even if they're not like asking for advice or anything, just saying, hi, I liked you on the podcast. It was fun. And people like saying all these nice things about me, which is kind of therapy for me in a way, because as someone who deals with anxiety, it's really hard for me to accept compliments and like accept that I'm like maybe good at something, or that people like what I have to say, because I'm usually thinking in my head like, oh, this is so stupid, you're not saying the right thing. And people are like, oh, that was funny. I'm like, what is happening? This is not true.
Yeah.
So it's been really, really, really awesome just to talk to people and hear your feedback. So thank you very much, peoples.
Yeah, I mean, if I can be said to have anxiety, it's mild. I mean, like on a clinical scale, but I mean, I've definitely had those moments where I'll put together an episode and I'm like, this is, and this actually happened mostly when I was doing the show solo. I was always confident with anything that I had with Daniel or Jonathan, because we had really good interplay, and like I said, I love those guys a lot. But when I was doing some of the episodes by myself, I would put together a show and I would think to myself like, I think this is a relevant topic, and then I would go back and look, and it's like, but God, there's so much more I wanted to say, or I could have said this better. Like, okay, this is the episode that's gonna suck, and like like half the listeners are gonna be like, oh, this is stupid. And then, that's the email, or that's the episode I get 2 or 3 emails about saying like, oh yeah, I really like this, or this really meant something to me. And I'm like, no, okay, fair enough.
Thanks, guys.
So I mean, I've corresponded with so many folks who listen to the show. And I mean, I absolutely love hearing, like, a lot of people when they reach out, they sort of, are apologetic because, I mean, I'm a busy person, and it's not all just because of the podcast. I mean, I have a busy personal life too. But like, I want to make it known that part of the reason that I do this is because I want to meet people and I want to get to know people and get to know people's stories. I wouldn't, I wouldn't do the podcast if my goal was to be, this person standing up, dispensing things to other people and having that not be a two-way exchange. It's always been about meeting and getting to know people and hearing people's stories and having conversations and stuff like that. So, if anybody's felt the need to reach out but has hesitated because of that, please do reach out. I want to do, actually speaking of, two quick shout outs, to those folks. And we're going to do a segment later in the show where we talk about, some stuff that folks have left on the Facebook, but there's 2 kind of that have stood out to me that I want to give a quick shout out to. One is a person I, have not asked permission to use their name. So I'm not even going to use their name, but they will know who they are when I talk about them. This is a person who reached out to me, made a fake Facebook profile specifically to reach out to me via the Gaytheist Manifesto Facebook page. And, we've corresponded pretty regularly over the past few months, and, they're in a pretty tough spot, and, I check up on them, every once in a while, and they send me, updates and stuff like that. And, that's been, really, really kind of eye-opening for me as far as how alone and isolated some people can be. And I just want to shout out to you. You know who you are, and that you're loved. Not just by me, but by a lot of folks, even folks that you don't know and don't talk to. And then, the other is, we have a listener named Rob who, came out today, as in Tuesday, the day that we record the episode, decided to come out to his family, and the public and his coworkers and everything is queer today. So, he reached out to me via email and said that, this is something that he felt like he needed to do. Made a Facebook profile, wrote a really great coming out letter, made a video explaining all of this, and, how he thought it was important to come out because, if you can do so safely, obviously, coming out adds to visibility, and visibility is almost always a good thing. So that's why he thought it was important to do, to not have to hide who he was. So Rob, from all of us here, all 2 of us at the Gaytheist Manifesto here, Definitely
and my cat
congratulations.
too, I guess.
Yes, and Ari's cat. What's your cat's name?
Yeah. Forrest.
Forrest. Okay, yeah.
But we call him Schroeder most of the time for reasons.
For reasons, got it.
Yes.
Understood. Would any other big personal milestones worth sharing in 2015 for you?
Oh man, there are just so many. The other big one, I think, which I've talked about in other episodes, is cutting off contact with my toxic family, which has not been easy, but so far anyway, I feel it's been definitely the right choice for me, and I feel a lot safer and healthier and happier since doing so. So that's that. And, since moving, I've started making new friends in the area, and there's a little kind of trans group that's forming here. If anyone's listening, hi. So I'm really glad to also have them, and we have a little chat thing going on where we just talk about trans.
That's awesome. I think probably one of the worst ideas ever in the history of the world is that you have to keep trying to make things work with toxic family members when, the relationship is not good for you, when the relationship's not good for either of you, that, just because this person has some sort of, blood or familial relation to you, that you're supposed to keep trying, and that you're supposed to forgive every bad thing that they do, and that cutting off contact means that you're quote unquote giving up or anything. I think that's such a horrible idea. Or you're
betraying them if it's, a close family member who's done a lot for you.
Right.
Which was the case for me.
Which, fair enough. Thanks for all the stuff that you did, but you're doing all kinds of bad stuff now, and I don't have to put up with that.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with saying any of that. And I guess I couldn't close out a segment about personal milestones without gushing about my girlfriend, because that's who I am.
How did I know this was going to happen?
I am a disgusting human being, and that's
so
just
gross.
But after struggling really, really hard for a really, really long time with, intimacy and, just wanting somebody to love and to love me and all that kind of stuff, I now have Celeste, who I adore absolutely. And she's coming over later, actually. And we're going to snuggle, and it's going to be gross. And there will probably be pictures on Facebook. But
Yes.
Well, we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be discussing more of the sort of news, current events, historical stuff that happened in 2015, as it pertains to atheism, as it pertains to the LGBT movement, because that's kind of our thing. More Gaytheist Manifesto coming up.
Here's an excerpt from The God Virus by Darrell W. Ray.
Every day, religion affects us in ways we may not realize. It makes your Uncle Ned spend hours praying for you. It gives your Baptist neighbor a reason to reject her own child who married a Catholic. It teaches your Pentecostal sister to spank her children to keep them from going to hell. It requires a Catholic priest to deny his sex drive. It causes people to give enormous amounts of money to religious organizations, and causes you to avoid talking to your cousin Jenny for fear she may try to convert you to Jehovah's Witnesses. Religion has both obvious and subtle influences on you and on society. This book explores the impact of religion on you and your world. It draws open the curtain of mystery and offers ways to understand and make informed decisions about religion. Have you ever wondered what makes religion so powerful? What makes people profess deep faith even as they act in ways that betray that faith? What makes people blind to the irrationalities of their own religion, yet see clearly the problems of other religions? How does it weave its way into our political system? If these and similar questions interest you, this book will help you understand its power in you, your family, and your culture.
The God Virus by Darrell W. Ray is available at atheistaudiobooks.com.
Before we jump back into the show, it's time to thank our patrons. Thank you so much for believing in us enough to contribute to us financially and for being a part of this movement. Patrons of the Gaytheist Manifesto have access to all sorts of cool stuff, like a big shout out on the show, premium content, including an audio journal I've decided to keep documenting the more personal stuff I don't dive into on the show, and an exclusive patrons only hangout once a month. If you're so inclined, head over to patreon.com/The Gaytheist Manifesto to become a part of this movement and support the show. Thank you. And welcome back to the Gaytheist Manifesto. This is our Gaytheist Queer in Review episode. For this segment, we're just going to be talking about kind of 2015, big stuff that happened in the LGBT movement, stuff that happened in the atheist movement, and stuff that just kind of happened generally in the world that we think was noteworthy. And obviously, this show couldn't go without mentioning the Supreme Court's decision on marriage equality, which I think is it's an important milestone, one whose importance may be slightly overblown given the issues that we still face in the queer and trans community, but pretty historic nonetheless. Ari, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, it's not the end of the line as far as equality goes, but it was an overwhelming day for me that day. I was just like so excited and thrilled that this thing that I thought 10 years ago, I thought that this would never happen in my lifetime, and now it's only been 10 years and it's already happened. So it was a huge, huge win, definitely for us. And I was also, I was really scared when it happened that people would kind of forget about the rest of the issues that need to be solved. They'd be like, oh, there's gay marriage now, so now the gays are all equal. Yay, that's all over. But that was not really the sense that I got. I got quite the opposite sense. I went to a reception by the local chapter in Little Rock of the Human Rights Campaign, and one of the first things they mentioned at the speech was we need to start focusing hardcore on trans issues now, because now that we've got, obviously there's still other things to do in the LGBT side of things, but the T side of LGBT is definitely something that we are lacking in. So we are going to now try and put a lot more resources and focus on that. And I was really touched by that.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, kind of secondary to, to marriage equality, I think, is the fact that the momentum of the movement, I don't feel has lagged. No. I mean, I was kind of afraid that it would. And, maybe it has in some places we're not seeing, but, I remember the local steering committee here of the Human Rights Campaign, which I'm actually now a member of because I do 10 million things and never sleep. We did, they called it a pop-up party because obviously we didn't know which day the Supreme Court was going to rule. So we organized this entire event with a floating date with this venue who was super, super awesome to work with from what I understand. I wasn't the one making the phone calls or anything, but, they were very much like, hey, this is a thing that's important to us. And, we want to be there to support. So just give us a call in the morning and let us know. And Jim Obergefell, who was, the main plaintiff in the case, he recorded this video for HRC, in case there was, a victory. And I mean, that was one of the first things that he said was like, look, we are not done. Like, we still have so far to go. Even just LGBT, LGB stuff, but, transgender people, we really, really got to ratchet up the momentum on that. And I mean, that felt really good because it's like, okay, I've showed up for
finally.
Right. Well, it's more like, and I hesitate to say this because it's going to sound like activism should be a quid pro quo thing. And that's not the way that I mean it. But I think to myself, like I've shown up for you. Now, please don't stop showing up for me now that you've got what you want. And I was kind of afraid that might happen. And I mean, given the history of trans people's treatment in the LGBT movement, I don't think my fears were quite, unfounded. But that's one thing that I can say I'm super happy about is I have not felt a letting up in the momentum at all. From the folks who do this sort of activism locally. You know, I don't get the sense that anyone thinks that, you know, that we're anything near done. It was just more of a milestone than anything else, which I can agree with. I mean, I think it's an important issue. Obviously, marriage equality is super important. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would lay it up against, you know, access to healthcare or, you know, the trans, you know, suicide epidemic or anything like that. But I mean, it is a big deal. And it is a trans issue too. I mean, you know, in Ohio, as a trans woman before marriage equality, it was up to a judge's discretion who it was legal for me to marry in Ohio. So, you know, I mean, it definitely helped me out too. You know, not that everything, you know, that happens has to help me, but just to say, you know, it's not that trans people were completely untouched by this decision, because it's certainly a trans issue too. So yeah. And I mean, I remember being a lot more emotional than I thought I would be over it, because I was very much thinking like, yeah,
I remember that you were on Facebook like, I'm crying so hard, you guys, I can't stop.
Because that's who I am and that's what I do.
That's true.
But because in the days coming up to it, I was just thinking like, okay, you know, this will be awesome if it happens, but what I'm really gearing up for is to tell everyone, don't you stop now. You know, but I remember, like, I woke up, I had my alarm set because they said, you know, if they're going to announce, they'll do it at, I think it was like 11:30 in the morning or something like that. And I had my alarm set, and I literally, like, I hit scotusblog.com and hit enter right as the live blog announced the decision. And I just, like, dropped my phone and lost it. And,
yeah, that's pretty much what happened to me too.
And I remember, like, 5 minutes later, Bobby C from No Religion Required giving me a call, like, super, super excited, wanting to congratulate me. And then I got a call from Human, which was awesome. And then I got a call from Steve, who I work with on the HRC committee, and he was like, we're doing this thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was very cool. And it's been very heartening to see that the momentum hasn't let up on that. And then the other one that we kind of have to cover, given the subject of the show, even though it leaves kind of a bad taste in my mouth to do it at this point, is
our best friend.
I just wrote in the run sheet that Caitlyn Jenner sucks. That's my note in the run sheet.
I wouldn't say she sucks, but I would say she has been very disappointing.
that's a very polite and diplomatic way to put it, and probably the way that I should have put it. Yeah. So nicely done.
We're disappointed in you, Caitlyn.
Yeah, and so here's the thing: if you listen back to the episode that we put out not too long after Caitlyn Jenner's coming out, I did a lot of hedging, I feel like, when she came out, because it was this could be a great thing for the movement. This could be a terrible thing for the movement. It will probably be a little bit of both for lots of reasons. And, you know, not that any one person's coming out has to even be about the movement, you know. But she has stepped willingly into that spotlight. So I feel like it's okay. I feel like it's okay to judge her on that basis because she has stepped into that spotlight. Yeah,
if she was just some random trans lady, she was saying the sort of thing she was saying, we'd be like, well, that's really not cool, but you do you. But, you know, if you're going to have a TV show where you basically make yourself the queen of the trans people, and then you're going to say these kind of things, then we have an issue.
Well, right, exactly. Because when she initially came out, my whole thing was like, look, visibility is important, right? And visibility doesn't always necessarily have to mean role models that we can look up to that are great people that have never done anything bad in their lives. And, you know, great. So like she was a sports hero. So maybe she'll be a trans sports hero. I don't know. Or maybe she decided to come out, do an interview with Diane Sawyer, and then she just wants to live her life privately, which is all fine. Yes. I am not one to tell someone that their life should be about, you shouldn't, I don't think, feel obligated to spend your entire life working for racial justice just because you're black, or working for trans justice because you're trans. You know, your life should be able to be about whatever you decide you want to make it about.
Yay, humanism.
But right. But I mean, she has stepped into this role and talking to people about trans issues when she is obviously not educated herself on the community outside of her own experience. And that's a problem, because what a lot of people don't understand is that problematic attitudes towards the trans community cause real harm to trans people. It's the reason we are continually denied healthcare access. It's the reason that the Houston Equal Rights Amendment failed, which we'll talk about in a minute. And lots of other things. So like, it's absolutely vital that if you're going to speak out publicly on those things, that you get it right. Especially when you're in a venue where you're not likely to get a retraction or a correction. It's just out there in the ether for anyone to watch. And unfortunately, we live in a celebrity obsessed culture who people are going to listen to her when they may not listen to me or Ari, because she's a celebrity. So that automatically makes her more important than in people's eyes than either of us. And, that's not to say that I've never had problematic attitudes or said stupid things about other trans people, about non-binary people, about trans women like me, I've had all of these problematic attitudes, and I've said lots of stupid things myself, but I did it in the context of learning, and I did it before I decided to step in to the light and actually start talking outwardly about these issues. And Caitlin needs to take more time to do that before she, speaks out and does more harm. So that's kind of my spiel on her.
Yeah.
So, the other big one.
That's all.
Yeah, that's. we could probably go for hours and hours on any of these subjects, but another one that I thought was important to bring up, and also Chris, the Seethan Heathen from Unbuckling the Bible Belt podcast, I thought that was important to bring up when I posted on Facebook and said, hey, what's some notable stuff that happened this year that you think is important to talk about. And so the Houston Equal Rights Amendment, for anyone who doesn't know, basically was an anti-discrimination law that was passed, if memory serves, it was passed by Houston City Council. It was a law that was passed into law without a popular vote, which many laws are. Cincinnati passed a ban on conversion therapy for minors by a city council vote, which huge milestone for Cincinnati, and that's awesome. But so people challenged the law. They took it all the way up to the state Supreme Court, and the state Supreme Court said basically, you have to put the law to a popular vote or you have to take it off the books. And so they put the law to a popular vote. And the attacks on trans people in the campaign to fight that law were horrifyingly vicious.
Yes.
I read an article where this trans woman decided to get up in front of city council and speak. And she talked about getting into the courthouse, realizing she had to go to the bathroom, and turning and looking at the women's bathroom and seeing 3 people looking very stern standing outside the bathroom to make sure that trans people weren't going to go in. And she talked about being spit on the way in and the way out, just to stand up in front of city council and say, you know what, I'm not a child molester. I'm not a predator. I'm just a person who's trying to live.
I just need to pee.
Hashtag. And the TV ads that were placed, the very overt accusation that, people would pretend to be trans to rape women in bathrooms.
Despite the fact that has happened literally 0 times.
Exactly. In many, many places who already have similar laws. Those things never happen, and trans people still report being harassed. As many as 70% in Washington, D.C., where they actually have one of those laws. It still hasn't prevented trans people from being harassed pretty badly and, just trying to use the bathroom. So I think if we can take a lesson from HERO, the Houston Equal Rights Amendment, is that there are times in our country where hatred still wins, and ignorance is not the correct word. Hatred is the correct word. There's no excuse for it other than hatred and bigotry, and we're gonna see that, as long as our country says that it's okay to put people's civil rights to a vote. I think we're just gonna see that. Frankly, I would like to see the original Civil Rights Amendment amended to include gender identity and sexual orientation and gender presentation as part of the amendment. So maybe that's extreme. I don't know.
So extreme, you guys.
Yeah, extreme equality. And to be fair, I think it was the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has actually ruled that sex discrimination actually covers discrimination against gay people and trans people in certain circumstances and in certain jurisdictions, which is awesome. Of course, that assumes that the trans or gay person in question would have the money to pay for a lawyer to fight that fight, which is a big leap to make. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. It's a step in the right direction.
Yes.
And then, of course, another thing we probably can't go without talking about in 2015, even though it technically happened in 2014, was the death of Leila Alcorn, which, we've kind of talked about a lot on the show, and I featured her pretty prominently in a talk that I gave at the Carolina Secular Convention and at the Atheists of Facebook online convention, and I'll put a YouTube link to my presentation there so folks can see it. But the quick recap is that Leila Alcorn was a 17-year-old transgender girl who committed suicide, actually here in Cincinnati, and auto-posted her suicide note to Tumblr, and the whole thing went viral, got worldwide attention, and there was a lot of new conversation surrounding trans issues in Cincinnati, in the country, and the world, surrounding this whole thing, which, I am very much one to say, when a tragedy happens, we can't change that it happens, so let's try and find the silver linings. And the fact that maybe some conversation happened that wouldn't have otherwise, or maybe some sort of progress that happened that wouldn't have otherwise, those are maybe the silver linings, but that doesn't stop this from being a tragedy. And the thing that I talked about in the talk that I think is still super relevant is the idea of suicide contagion. And that's the idea of, sending the message to kids, trans kids, that you'll get the attention and love that you want from the entire world if you go ahead and commit suicide. And that's dangerous. And so many of us are willing to say, we're willing to use the Fix Society hashtag and to share the Laser Princess memes from Leila. And Leila was important. She was a person, she was important, and she mattered. But there's lots of trans kids here who are struggling now, who are alive, that need to be reminded that their lives matter, and that we will love them while they're here. They don't have to hurt themselves or kill themselves to get that love. So I think that's a pretty important story in 2015 as well. And yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, Cincinnati, within the city limits, actually has banned conversion therapy for minors, which I think is fantastic. It's pathetic that Ohio couldn't do it, and that a federal law probably wouldn't even get considered. But we have a pretty fierce ally in a gentleman named Chris Seelbach on the Cincinnati City Council, who kind of helped orchestrate that whole thing. So, do you have any other thoughts on Leila Alcorn?
Just that we shouldn't be waiting for people to hurt themselves or kill themselves until we do something about the things that are causing pain. That's pretty much the big lesson, I think. If you want to pull a lesson out of this tragedy.
Right. And I think that's the thing, you have to walk on eggshells, right? Because, I mean, it happened, right? Mm-hmm. There's nothing that we can do to change that. So, like, let's try and pull what good we can from it. But we have to stop short of saying it's a good thing.
Yeah. Obviously.
And, well, you would think that it's obvious. It's obvious to you and it's obvious to me. But if you read some of the media coverage that has surrounded this whole thing, especially in some places in Cincinnati, it's been pretty rough. I had a journalist ask a friend of mine, how was Leela's death crucial to the movement? And I was just floored. I had no idea what to say. And, and if you read, there are some media outlets in Cincinnati who got it right, who, first of all, use the correct name, use the correct pronouns, and went out of their way to interview trans people about the situation. And, a lot of credit for that goes to some of the folks on the HRC steering committee in Cincinnati who have all the media contacts. And so when the media reached out to them, they said, no, we don't need to be on camera. We need trans faces on camera. Let me give you Callie's number. Let me give you Lindsay's number. And so generally speaking, they did a pretty good job of that. But there have been some where it's like, here, let's have 5 or 6 non-trans people talk about the situation for trans people in Cincinnati. Let's see how that goes. Mm-hmm. And it's just really, really frustrating. Couple of other things. All of these religious freedom bills.
My freedoms.
Yeah. MURICA. Yeah. Well, and so this goes back to the thing like hero, right? This is what happens when you put people's civil rights to a vote and expect people to do the right thing. They typically don't, because bigots will win if you let them. A lot of times, unfortunately, we have certainly made progress, and I don't mean to completely, downplay that, but bigots will win where you let them, where you give them an in. And, $1 million for a pizza parlor and $250,000 for this cake bakery that, doxed a gay couple and got death threats sent to them. All of these things are prime examples of, what it feels like for LGBT people to live in a country where our rights are not held as sacred, where our rights are very much held as a matter of, well, should we treat them like people? If everyone says so, we will. But if people aren't okay with it, then I guess we don't have to. I think it's hard to understate what kind of an effect that can have on you when you constantly see, well, let's see what all the cisgender people think about this thing to make trans people's lives better. And I don't think people understand how taxing that can be on someone's psyche to constantly see that over and over and over again. What's going to happen to cis people if we let trans people use the correct bathroom? Well, I don't know, but I can tell you what's happened to a lot of trans people as a result of those cultural attitudes. And the answer is they're dead now. Yes. So, yeah. So that's been... some positives. So let's let's end the segment.
Really dark here.
Yeah. let's end this segment on some positives. So, mass resignation from the Mormon Church.
Yeah. Do you know how many people that was? I probably should have looked that up before we started. It was at least hundreds or thousands of people, wasn't it? Oh, this from RT.com says it was over 1,800.
Nice. I just found an article on CNN where this lawyer said he was personally delivering 1,500 resignation letters.
Yeah. Which is sad when you need a lawyer to help you resign from church.
Right. Which, yeah, I mean, if you go back, we did a Mormons episode with a couple of ex-Mormons, and that whole thing is kind of explained there. But so this guy, I guess he actually had an event. We had an incredible turnout, he said. I was slammed for 3 hours. Some people stood in line for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So, and the policy that prompted all of this was the Mormon Church, the LDS headquarters said basically the policy prohibits the natural or adopted, quote unquote, children of parents in same-sex relationships from receiving a name and a blessing and a ceremony performed by the Mormon priesthood according to the handbook. Which basically means we're gonna act like your kid doesn't exist if you're gay.
Can't be a super Mormon.
Right.
Yes. And then wasn't it also that the children of gay parents couldn't be like full members of the church?
Oh yeah. Which, like, I have kind of a dual reaction when stories like this come out. Part of me thinks, like, well, we all know what the Bible has to say about homosexuality, so are you honestly surprised?
Yeah, that was my reaction. We're like, oh my God, I can't believe the Mormon Church is doing this. And I was like, it's in the Bible that gay people are not good. They're just doing what's in their book.
Well, right. And then, of course, the other part of me is like, well, that's really disgusting that you actually want to put out a guideline to clarify that, to say, like, no, we're going to double down on the fact that basically you have an illegitimate child if you're gay. It's impossible for you to have a legitimate child if you're gay. It's an absolutely disgusting attitude, but not exactly surprising coming from the Mormon Church proper, quote unquote. So a whole crap ton of people left the church over it, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I was super surprised by that. I was like, you're already Mormons. Like, don't you already kind of... I mean, I know there are liberal-ish Mormons out there, but I was surprised at how many people were outraged by this. But then, again, to be fair, it was probably also people who had already mostly left the church and were trying to just get their names off of the... I don't know what it's called, the registry or whatever.
Church rolls, I think is what they call it.
Yeah, they keep your name as an official member of the church, and then apparently you need a lawyer to get it off, and you have to send them an official letter saying, don't have me on your little list anymore. I'm not a Mormon anymore.
Right. And then another good thing that happened was that the Stonewall movie was a colossal flop.
Yes. That was funny.
And so Roland Emmerich made this movie about the Stonewall riots, which is what most people point back to as the initial spark for the LGBT movement, which a lot of people will even disagree with that, because there was definitely stuff happening in the community before that. But people kind of look back to that as like the flashpoint, which is interesting because there are so many people who are like super fans of the LGBT movement, but are not okay with violent protests.
Yes.
Which is just hilarious to me because, like, you love this movement and you probably don't even know that it started with a violent protest, a riot, really. But so Roland Emmerich made this movie and he cast a cis gay guy as the lead and implied that he was the one that started it when it was really a black trans woman, and trans women of color were actually kind of sort of at the center of that whole thing. And he decided to just kind of push that whole thing aside, which was absolutely ridiculous. And as a result, I honestly think it was partially as a result of that, or mostly as a result of that the movie was a complete and utter flop.
Yeah, I remember when it came out, I was seeing tons of stuff from LGBT groups saying don't see this movie because it's just basically whitewashing what actually happened.
I mean, I literally think I remember seeing, like, its first weekend, it made like $7,000.
Oh God.
Something crazy like that. Like,
so bad. I could make $7,000 off a movie.
The Department of Defense announced that they were looking at lifting the ban on trans people serving in the military this year. That's pretty cool. Apparently they're supposed to announce guidelines or something for that in February, which is cool.
Yes.
And there
I actually didn't even know before then that trans people weren't allowed in the military. I knew obviously the whole don't ask, don't tell thing, but I didn't realize that there was like an official policy. Like if you're diagnosed with gender identity disorder, then you are mentally ill and you can't be in the military.
Yeah. And it's just bad. And I mean, and of course, not that the military lifting the ban is automatically going to make things peachy for trans folks serving in the military, because that's still a pretty awful culture, to be in if you're anything less than like super hyper masculine dude.
Right.
But, it's certainly a step in the right direction. And, there are folks who are, a year or two away from retirement, that might lose their pension or something like that because they get outed or something like that. And it'll be helpful for a lot of people, I think. So that'll be cool. And, yeah, oh gosh, there's a lot more, but we're already pretty long in this segment. So we're going to take a quick last break here. And when we come back, we're going to tell your stories that, you left on our Facebook, for your own personal milestones and, things that you remember from this year. More Gaytheist Manifesto after this.
Today in school, I learned a lot. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes me. In English, I learned that I'm disgusting. And in physics, I learned that I'm a loser.
Today in school, I learned that I'm ugly and useless. And in gym, I learned that I'm pathetic and a joke. In history, I learned that I'm trash.
Today in school, I learned that I have no friends. In English, I learned that I make people sick. And at lunch, I learned that I sit on my own because I smell. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes me.
In biology, I learned that I'm fat and stupid. And in math, I learned that I'm trash.
The only thing I didn't learn in school today?
The only thing I didn't learn today?
The only thing I didn't learn?
Is why no one ever helps.
Kids witness bullying every day. They want to help, but they don't know how. Teach them how to stop bullying and be more than a bystander at stopbullying.gov.
Here's an excerpt from Nailed by David Fitzgerald.
Didn't there have to have been a Jesus? Perhaps he was just a wandering teacher or an exorcist, an apocalyptic prophet or a zealot who opposed the Romans. Perhaps he was all these things, or even a composite of several such early first-century figures. But at any rate, surely there had to be somebody at the original core of Christianity, arguably the most famous individual in human history. All this seems to be a perfectly reasonable, completely natural assumption to make, so why would anyone be so foolish as to propose that Jesus never existed? Doesn't it just make more sense to assume that there was a historical Jesus, even if we're unable to recover the real facts about his life and death? As it turns out, no. The opposite is true. The closer we look at the evidence for Jesus, the less solid evidence we find, and the more we find suspicious silences and curious resemblances to the pagan and Jewish religious ideas and philosophies that preceded Christianity. And once you begin to parse out the origins of this tradition or that teaching from their various sources, the sweater begins unraveling quickly until it becomes very difficult to buy that there ever was, or even could have been, any historical figure at the center.
Nailed by David Fitzgerald is now available at atheistaudiobooks.com.
Welcome back to the Gaytheist Manifesto. In this segment, we're gonna spend some time talking about stuff that was left on my Facebook page and the Gaytheist Manifesto page about personal milestones, stuff that some folks wanted to share about their year. So let's kind of start here. Lucy D. Lucy, I love you. First of all, I just want you to know that. Lucy has had an incredibly tough year. Lucy lost her husband and has had several bouts with cancer. And I'm not, outing her without her permission. She's been very public about her situation. She's an amazing person, and I've had the privilege of being her friend. And she said, "You've already been kind enough to help me through my worst/best year, sister." And Ari pointed out before we came back from the break, when I pasted this into our run sheet for the show, it actually just types out the word heart emoticon, even though she actually put a heart emoticon in the post. That's hilarious for some reason.
Heart emoticon.
Richard said that my just need to pee talk brought tears to his eyes. And I totally did not intend on this post turning out this way, but a lot of the folks who posted memories of, but between them and I, which I think is fantastic, because that's, the personal relationships that I've helped, that I've, formed over this past year is a big part of the story of my year too. So I'm 100% okay with this. But, Richard's talking about in episode 4, we're talking about transgender bathroom bills. And I ended up getting super, super emotional and like crying on the show for a little bit, because it really scares me how many people are still yet to be lost from bigotry. And yeah, but the fact that it brought tears to people's eyes, I think at least helped let people know that this whole thing is real. So.
Also, you're evil and you just like to make people cry.
That's what it is. I am a sadist of the worst kind. I feed on your tears.
Yummy.
You want to read Patrick's?
Yes. So Patrick Anderson said, "Honestly, getting my very first Facebook account has been huge for me for a variety of reasons, but mainly because it has allowed me to live openly, and openly is in all caps.
Yes.
As an open atheist and secular humanist, as an open LGBTQ ally, as an open liberal, as an open polyamorous. It's one of those things I didn't realize how much not being honest about these things sucked until I finally just started publicly being who I am. It's wonderful, and although I've definitely pissed off a few people, I wouldn't change it. Smiley face.
Yay for authenticity.
Yes, I've had the exact same experience this year as well. Just, I was kind of out-ish as genderqueer. I would like post about it on my Facebook every so often, but ever since being like, I'm changing my name, you got to do my pronouns right, I'm starting testosterone, like I didn't realize how much all that stuff was weighing on me until it's not weighing on me anymore.
Yeah, you lose a 1,000-pound weight that you never realized you were carrying.
Absolutely.
So, and the next one is from Miss Ashley, no religion required. Another one of my favorite people. Meeting my first transgender woman and realizing how much of an amazing woman she is and the lessons she has taught me. ReasonCon 2015 was one of my most memorable moments because I met you and received one of the best hugs ever. And Chris, the Seethan Heathen, replied she was definitely the highlight of ReasonCon. You guys, me winning Skepperty was the highlight of ReasonCon. I think.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to be harping on that for the rest of my life. Just throwing that out there.
Probably, yes.
But Ashley is awesome, and I remember I've probably told this story on the show before, but I'm going to tell it again because I think it's adorable, and it's just totally encapsulates who Ashley is and why I love her so much. When I first walked into the hotel lobby for the con, I started kind of looking around trying to see people that I might recognize, and I kind of realized, like, wow, most of the people that I know here are podcasters whose faces I've only ever seen in tiny little Facebook pictures.
Yeah.
So somebody was making the joke. I don't remember who actually made it. It might have been Ashley that was making the joke. That she was saying you'd have to walk up to people and ask them to say something before you could recognize them.
Exactly.
But one person I could not possibly miss is Bobby C, because he's super tall. He's always wearing that white hat, and he's just like kind of a big bear of a guy. So I immediately ran up to Bobby. I gave him a big hug. We talked for a second. And he was like, I got somebody that wants to meet you. And I was like, and it took me a second to realize, like, oh yeah, Ashley's not here. He's probably talking about Ashley. And Ashley walks up and she sees me and she just loses it. And she's got her hands over her face and she's crying, and I go to give her a hug, and she just goes, I love you so much.
And, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I mean, she's so much fun to hang out with. She's such a great person, and she's whip smart. Like if you listen to her talk about the Bible and stuff like that on their podcast, she's been through a lot in her life. She's talked pretty openly about dealing with abuse and stuff like that, and been super open with her story and trying to use it to help other people. So aside from loving her dearly, I have a very, very high level of respect for her as a human being too. So that was kind of a treat seeing her post that.
Oh, I can't wait to go to a con.
Oh my God, it's gonna be so good.
It's gonna be so great. Give everyone hugs.
Oh, hugs are the best. Funny story from ReasonCon. There was, if memory serves, it was an atheist guy and his Christian wife. And somebody asked her, like, well, what do you think of this whole thing? And her response was, everyone's just hugging each other. Because I guess she just assumed it was going to be this, like, we're all going to yell about how much we hate God and how stupid Christians are.
Yeah.
But, really, I mean, honestly, it's like a love fest with alcohol is kind of what my con experience has been thus far. My friend Jason, he just says in all caps with no spaces, I want to be on. And I'll just shout out to Jason because Jason is a person who came into my life when things were not super great for me, and I think we did a lot of mutually helping each other out through some really, really tough stuff. He's if you follow if you listen to the music that's in the show, a lot of it is music that he wrote. He is a lost state of mind, and he writes really cool music, and I use a lot of his music on the show. And aside from that, he's just an awesome person. Trav Mamone, from the By Any Means podcast, the two most memorable things about 2015 for me were starting my podcast and losing my job. Guess which one was a good memory?
Losing the job?
Right. I mean, if it was a job that you hated. Danny says this. Danny says this day, which I posted it. Looks like that comment was on December 26th. So just said this day, didn't say why. So I'm glad it was a good day for you, Danny.
Yep.
Tony says the legalization of gay marriage, which obviously we talked about. My friend Sarah, who I am going to be the maid of honor at her wedding.
Yay.
Says I still can't legally marry my girlfriend Lynn, but at least Callie will be my maid of honor when I get a hand fasting. And the reason that she says that is because Sarah's in a polyamorous relationship. So, obviously polyamorous relationships are not legally recognized. So, they'll be doing what they call a hand fasting, which my understanding is kind of like a pagan marriage ceremony thing. So, Nat, who was in the sex episode, says, just thankful the year is ending. I spent it with my life mate, but it was the hardest adult year yet. We love you, Nat, and I hope this year is better.
Yes.
Artie, you want to read the next one?
Engel Harm says, 2015, the year I overcame so many fears. It matured me so much. I got fired, but in turn, I learned to own my future instead of letting others dictate my life.
Yes.
Yeah. Power.
3 cheers for owning your future. That's
Absolutely.
It shouldn't be as hard to do as it is. And then my friend Danny, you will remember Danny from the Parents and Kids episode. Danny is a trans man that I interviewed with his mom about their experience together. And Danny says, I'm struggling with my religion and the hypocrisy of it, and I have my own view of a higher power, but my religion doesn't agree. I am struggling with being associated with a religion, but feeling more agnostic and religiously divergent. Also, I had my top surgery and my hysterectomy this year, and I am feeling very proud of my 30-pound weight loss. So, boo for struggles, hooray for progress.
But also yay for struggles, because self-discovery.
Absolutely. Yes. So, and I reached out to Danny to let him know that, we love him. And, if he wants to hear anything about an atheistic worldview that's not going to be pushy or shoved down his throat, he can certainly reach out to us here. So,
yes, we'd love to talk to you.
And Jeremiah, Oh, my dear Jeremiah. I like the prophet Jeremiah from No Religion Required.
The prophet Jeremiah.
He needs his own theme song, I feel like.
I'm going to make it. It's going to happen.
I like that time you started a podcast. A+ milestone. Which, like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to disagree. I think that was... It was at least an A milestone, if not an A+. So
yeah, there's always room for improvement. So just a regular A will do, I think.
Right. All right, you want to read the next one?
Let's see here. Vivian said, "It took me a long time to reconcile my belief in creation with being who I am. It wasn't until I was forced to out myself by an evil, wicked person that I was forced to learn all I could about the gender spectrum and that it was okay to be me. It had cost me almost everything, but finally I can see the light of inner peace starting to grow brighter, even if it flickers sometimes. 2016 has got to be better, I hope."
Well, sounds like we may have some, differing beliefs and worldviews, and that's totally fine. But definitely can't underestimate how valuable it is to finally be able to be yourself. And, unfortunately it can have a high cost, but I've yet to meet anyone who said that they would take it back if they could, and gain back the family that they lost, and going back in the closet and deciding to be inauthentic with themselves. And then finally, our friend, my platonic lover, Hugh Man.
Does he know about this?
I don't know, but we always I always joke with his spouse about how I'm gonna steal his man because he's adorable, and because he's sassy and Brazilian. Keep your hands off my man, you slut. Because I love him dearly. There's a celebration. You! ! Seriously, I celebrate you coming into my life this year. My life is better because of you. And just stop it. You're gonna make me cry. Listen, Hugh Man is a rare kind of person. I'm gonna gush on Hugh for just a second here.
Let's
if
do
I can.
It. Open up that can.
Which of course I can, because no one's gonna stop me.
It's your podcast.
I first met Hugh for real when we were on the No Religion Required show together. They did an LGBT episode, and they had Hugh because he's gay and me because I'm trans, and we had conversed a little bit on Facebook and Twitter before that, but that was the first time we'd really gotten to talk to each other. And I thought to myself while we were conversing, like, I really like this guy. Like, he seems like a really, really good guy. And then we finally met at ReasonCon in person, and he loves hugs just as much as I do, which is always a plus in my book. Just the best kind of person, like nothing but love in this guy's heart. And he goes out of his way to help people so much. He's helped me so much in a lot of different ways. And he's done nothing but ask me to pay it forward. Because, he believes in what I do, and he wants to help, and he's just an amazing guy. If you don't know Hugh Man, you're messing up in life.
You're doing life wrong.
You are doing life absolutely wrong.
Sorry, Hugh, you're gonna get like 3,000 friend requests after this.
Oh, I'm sure he's already got him. He's been on the show 2 or 3 times at this point, and he's kind of a regular on No Religion Required, which they're, if I'm going to throw down the gauntlet, they have their audience is a bit bigger than ours. So.
What?
I think he's probably more of a celebrity than either of us at this point, actually.
Oh man. I want to be a celebrity.
We'll get there.
Okay.
And that, my friends, is going to do it for this episode of the Gaytheist Manifesto on Secular Media Network. I want to thank everyone who contributed to the episode and left their comments. And best of 2016. I hope everyone has a super happy new year. I personally am not a super huge fan of New Year's resolutions. just because I'd rather, make the change when it's relevant to make the change. But I have a real problem with people who like shit on people who make New Year's resolutions, because I think trying to make yourself better once a year is better than nonce a year. And I just made that word up.
Nice.
But I'm a big believer in, since New Year's resolutions often fail, if you see somebody make one, why don't you reach out to them and see how you can help them and see if you can help them achieve their goals. So I, obviously a year is a nearly arbitrary system of time made up by people that means exactly as much as we want to attach to it. That doesn't stop me from hoping that everyone has a super happy new year. I'm going to be at work on New Year's Eve, which I'm super excited about.
Oh, yeah.
But my roommate's throwing a party that I'm going to come home to, so I'm really excited about that because it's all going to be good people. And so I hope you have a happy new year, and seriously, best of 2016 to everyone. I love all of you, and I'm sure Ari loves all of you too. Don't you?
Nah.
No?
No.
They're like, yeah, some of you are okay.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, you're right. Just kidding.
You can find the show on Facebook at facebook.com/The Gaytheist Manifesto. You can email us at thegaytheistmanifesto@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter at Gaytheist Callie. You can find the show on Twitter at The Gaytheists. And if you just want to say your Facebook, since that's all you have real quick.
My Facebook is Ari Coleman.
What
else do I say about it? That's it.
Before we go, I want you to know that if you're lost, you're hurting, you're scared, if you feel like no one cares and no one understands, you need to know there's a community out here that loves you, cares for you, knows that you're capable of amazing things and that you are worthy of love. If you're struggling, please don't be afraid to reach out. Until next time, friends, this is the Gaytheist Manifesto.